Some lights should stay off. Here are 3 real stories that prove it. The wrong house. It was Halloween night, and I was taking my 9-year-old niece, Sophie, trick-or-treating around my neighborhood. We live in a quiet suburb where everyone kind of knows each other, so it felt safe. Kids were running around in the latest costume trends. Parents were chatting on sidewalks, and the whole block had that warm, orange Halloween glow, the usual. We'd hit most of the houses on our street. Porch lights were on, people were handing out candy, and Sophie's bucket was almost full. She was dressed as a witch, big hat, green makeup, the whole thing. She was loving it. Then, just as we were about to head home, she pointed down the street. "Uncle Mark," she said, "that house has its lights on. Can we go there too?" I looked over and felt a weird twist in my stomach. It was the last house on the block. A run-down, gray 2-story that had been empty for as long as I could remember. Paint was peeling off the siding, the yard was overgrown, and the windows looked almost too dark, like they swallowed the light. But she was right. The porch light was on. By Halloween rules, that meant the house was giving out candy. I hesitated. "I don't know, Soph. I don't think anyone lives there." "But the lights are on," she said. "Come on, just one more." Before I could say no, she was already halfway up the walkway. I followed, slower. The closer I got, the more I noticed how dead quiet it was. No music, no decorations, just that yellow porch light buzzing softly. The front door was slightly ajar, like someone had just walked in or was waiting for someone to walk through. "Sophie," I said, my voice low, "don't go inside." She froze a few steps from the door. I caught up to her and gently took her hand. Then we heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I looked around. There was no one to the side or behind us. It was coming from somewhere deep inside the house. Sophie looked up at me with wide eyes. I started to back us away from the porch, pulling her gently. Then a voice came from inside. Raspy, a male voice. "Come in. I've been waiting for you." I didn't even think twice. I scooped Sophie up and bolted. I didn't stop until we were 3 houses away. I turned to look back. The door was shut. The porch light was still on. Silent. We told my sister, Sophie's mom, what happened. She figured it was probably just someone trying to scare kids. I wanted to believe that too, but something about it gnawed at me. The next morning, I walked back in the daylight. The house looked even worse than I remembered. Dead vines on the walls, a shattered window on the 2nd floor. The porch light was off this time. That's when I saw something new that I didn't see last night. Taped across the front door was a large, faded notice from the city. Property condemned, no entry, structurally unsafe, no utilities active since 2019. Since 2019, there was no power, no electricity. So how was the porch light on? And who was walking around inside? I don't take Sophie trick-or-treating anymore, not because she's too old for it. Now we stick to the town's organized Halloween events, a local rec center party, trick-or-treat setups, bright lights, people around. And I'll never forget the voice that came from the dark, like it had been waiting, not for candy, for someone to make the mistake of coming to the wrong house. The Stalker in the Mask. I used to work at a Spirit Halloween store during college. Just a seasonal gig, minimum wage, weird hours, nothing special. But it was easy work. I liked the people I worked with, and I've always been into Halloween, so I didn't mind. This happened a few years ago, on Halloween night itself. We were open late until 10 p.m. for last-minute costume hunters and parents grabbing clearance deals. I was working the floor with two coworkers, Jordan, who was on the register, and April, our manager, who was mostly in the back doing inventory. Around 9:45, the store was nearly empty. That's when I noticed him. He was standing perfectly still in aisle 3, the accessory section. Black hoodie, hood up, wearing this old rubber clown mask. Not one of ours. It was cracked, yellowed, the kind of mask you'd find at a garage sale. Not anything we sold. I assumed it was a customer being weird. That happens. I walked closer and gave the usual line. "Hey, can I help you find anything?" Nothing. He didn't speak, didn't move. I figured maybe he was just messing with me, or maybe on something. Then I noticed what was in his hand. A knife. At first, I thought it had to be one of ours, a fake prop. We sell plastic knives, swords, all that stuff. But this one looked real. It was long, rusted, heavy looking, and it had that dull, real metal sheen. I stepped a bit closer to get a better view, but not too close. It wasn't plastic. It definitely was real. I backed up slowly and walked over to the register. I told Jordan, and he immediately called April from the back. We were trying not to panic. Maybe it was just a prank, but we weren't taking chances. When we turned to look back down the aisle, the guy was gone. No door chime, no footsteps, nothing. We checked every aisle. The store was empty. The only other door besides the front was the back stock room, which is always locked during open hours. April checked it just to make sure. Still locked. No sign of anyone. At that point, we called the cops. They showed up maybe 15 minutes later. Looking back, anything could have happened in those 15 minutes. But when they arrived, they swept the store and took our statements. Said it was probably someone pulling a Halloween prank. "This time of year brings out the weirdos," one of them joked. That night, we locked up as a group. None of us wanted to be alone. The next morning, April reviewed the security footage. She called us immediately. There was no footage of the guy entering the store. From the moment we opened at 10 a.m., every customer was accounted for. Door chime, camera, register logs, all normal. But at exactly 9:41 p.m., there he was. He just appeared in aisle 3. Even stranger, at 9:30, the cameras glitched. Not for long, just a few seconds, but enough. We wondered if he somehow tampered with the system, but it didn't make sense. We reviewed the footage from the entire day. No sign of him entering. No sign of him in the back. We even checked the night before to see if he'd hidden in the store overnight or was casing the place. Nothing. It was like he materialized out of thin air, right in front of me, wearing a mask, holding a knife. After that, April filed a full report. Corporate got involved. They sent someone from loss prevention to check the store top to bottom They found nothing. No hiding spots, no tampering, no signs of forced entry. We never saw that man again. No one was hurt, but a few people quit after that, and I haven't worked retail since. It's just not for me anymore. I still think about it, especially around Halloween. I tell myself it was just a guy who snuck in somehow. Maybe it was just a weird prank. But in the back of my mind, I can't shake the thought. What if he was planning something worse? Something far more sinister? Because he wasn't shopping. He wasn't browsing. He was just standing there, still, silent, like he was waiting. Waiting to do what? I'm just glad we never found out. The Last House on Oak Ridge Lane. I grew up in a small town, the kind of place where Halloween wasn't just a holiday, it was an event. Every year, kids would dress up, hit the same streets, and every house would be decked out with pumpkins, cobwebs, fake skeletons, you name it. Except for one. Everyone in town knew the rule. Don't trick or treat at the last house on Oak Ridge Lane. It was this huge, crumbling Victorian at the very edge of the neighborhood. Way bigger than any other house around it, but completely neglected. Peeling paint, overgrown yard, windows boarded up with thick, weather-worn plywood. People said it was haunted, but the real story was darker. Back in the 80s, a man who lived there allegedly handed out poisoned candy. A few kids got sick. One didn't make it. The house was abandoned after that, and no one ever moved in. At least, that's what we were all told and what we all believed. When I was 13, me and my friend Jason decided we were finally old enough to stop believing in town legends. That Halloween, we made a plan. We'd trick or treat at the Oak Ridge house, just to say we did. We went late, around 9:30 p.m., when most kids had already gone home. The house looked exactly like you'd expect. Rotted porch steps, a dead tree in the front yard, a mailbox hanging on by one rusted hinge. But the porch light was on. That's what stopped us cold. Jason stared at it. Dude, someone's home. We stood there for a full minute before he said, "Come on, just knock. What's the worst that could happen?" I didn't want to look scared, so I followed him up the steps. We knocked. I expected silence. Instead, the door opened. A woman answered. She looked normal. Not ghostly or creepy or anything. Just older. Maybe in her 70s, with gray hair tied back in a bun and a soft smile on her face. She was wearing an apron, like she'd been baking. "Trick or treat," Jason said nervously. "Well, aren't you too brave?" she said, laughing gently. "You're my first trick-or-treaters in years." She dropped 2 full-size Snickers bars in our bags. Then she looked at me and said, "I hope you'll come back next year." That night, I put the Snickers bar on my desk before I went to bed. I didn't eat it. I just kept looking at it, trying to shake the feeling that something was off. But I couldn't explain why. The next morning, my mom was reading the local news at breakfast. She froze mid-sentence. "Did you hear that someone bought and is planning to move into the Oak Ridge house?" "Yeah, we trick-or-treated there last night." Her face went pale. "That's not possible." She turned around and showed me a photo. The house was still boarded up, porch lights off, yard untouched. Apparently, a local realtor had checked on the place that morning after hearing someone had seen lights, but there was no sign of entry. No one living there. The power had been disconnected for over a decade. I ran upstairs to check my desk. The Snickers bar was still there. Relieved, I picked it up, but right away, I noticed something I hadn't seen the night before. The wrapper was slightly torn near the corner, like it had been opened, then resealed. My stomach dropped. I peeled it open slowly. The chocolate looked normal at first, but just under the top layer, across the nougat, was a thin, dark red smear. Not caramel, not anything sweet. It looked like dried blood. I dropped it immediately. I didn't tell anyone, not even Jason. I sealed it in a Ziploc bag and shoved it to the back of my closet. Jason still swears he has his, untouched, like a trophy. Says we did something no one else ever has. I just try not to think about it. I haven't been back to Oak Ridge Lane since. I avoid that street entirely every October. Because that house may be boarded up, but on Halloween night, the porch light still turns on, and someone or something is still handing out candy. And whatever it is, it's not meant for kids. This is Mr. H. You're listening to Masked Horror.